Hi, sociology students. It's your teacher, Mrs. Lindemeyer, and I am here to just give you a short introduction into what is sociology. So first off, before we get going, let's take a look at some of these questions that we ask about our social world. Are men and women really that different? Why do we have problems such as racism? And what motivates people to have social status and respect? So keep those in mind as we start moving along some of the key concepts of sociology. So first off, what is sociology? This crazy social studies elective that you signed up for. Sociology is a systematic study of human society, culture, and relationships on a group level. Sociology is a social science like psychology and economics. So one way to think about sociology is to contrast it with a different but similar field. One big one is social psychology, which you may have heard of. But social psychology asks many of the same questions as sociology, but it uses different research methodology and studies people on an individual level instead of the group level. So we look more at that broad spectrum, general patterns of groups, whereas psychology looks at the individual level. For example here, while sociology studies group patterns such as why one culture believes in men having multiple wives while another culture does not, social psychology would study like how the individual people within the marriage feel about their particular partner. So it's a little bit different. Big picture is really what we look for. So basically, sociology looks at the big picture ideas on a group level. We try to understand the social world objectively and analyze repeated behaviors and patterns so that we can make, hopefully, good public policy and good social policy and see things happen the way we want them to happen. Okay. Another field is sociology versus anthropology. So another one is anthropology, right? Anthropology also examines human society just like sociology, but anthropology focuses more on how human society has changed over time rather than what is a good culture for us to have and how society interacts today. So for example, it includes is examining ancient tools and pottery and so forth to see how ancient cultures compare to modern cultures. So we're looking more for that change and continuity over time piece, not so much what is happening at this particular time and how to make this time better for our society. So, for example, an anthropologist might look back at, say, I don't know, the Yellow River in ancient China, right, in that society and say, wow, over here they have a toy for little kids or a board game, right? And what does that tell us? It tells us that some people had leisure time. As we know, that hasn't changed today. We have leisure time. We have video games. We still play board games. I get beat all the time by Monopoly Gamer and Mario from my lovely son. He's 5. He beats me. Anyways, so that is sociology versus anthropology, a little bit different, okay? So we're going to look at some major themes and questions as we go throughout the course. Like sociology studies really different ideas for what might create an ideal society. So, for example, some people believe that society should focus on making sure everyone is treated equally, including from an economic perspective. This, as we probably know, is socialism and eventually communism. Socialists believe the government is in charge of that. Communists believe that we live in our own little communes and we treat each other equally. There are no social classes, and that from an economic perspective, we are all equal. Okay, but then other people would say things like, an ideal society is one that definitely includes different social classes because wanting to be rich motivates people to invent things and work harder and just ultimately be more successful, right? And again, that's capitalism. So hopefully you're remembering some of this stuff from previous social studies courses, but this is an idea or a thought process of what makes an ideal society, okay? Kind of in the eye of the beholder. So these questions include a study of how economics, politics, and culture combine in different ways to make what we would consider our ideal society. There are other questions, however, like another question, how is culture created and how is it passed down from one generation to the next? And really, what changes that culture? Our culture as Americans has changed quite a lot since the beginning of our nation. So what causes that change? So, for example, if you think about foods that come from your country, if you're from here in the United States, which most of us probably are, our culture includes things like hamburgers and hot dogs. So these food items are incorporated into other aspects of American culture, like when you eat a hot dog at a baseball game, right? Hence the picture, in case you were wondering why I had a picture of a guy with a hot dog at a baseball game. There we go, okay? So just something to consider: how are our children influenced by these cultural images? And how do different cultures result in different kinds of people and ideas when we all come from our same society? Okay, so we're going to be looking at that idea as well. Some other things to consider. Sociology also studies the similarities and differences among different types of people. Okay. Remember at the beginning of this lesson, we talked about whether men and women are really different. Okay. What about people of different races or ethnicities? How about people who are rich versus our people in poverty, right? How is a grandmother different from her granddaughter? Another thing to look at is sociology studies social institutions. So social institutions are major structures made up of groups or ideas that influence people's daily lives, views of the world, or integration into society. So society, or all of these pieces, have actually come to be known as part of what makes up a civilization, right? Since the beginning of civilization, the beginning of history, we've had social institutions. And in case you are still confused as to what a social institution is, things like religions and schools and political organizations, and even your family can be considered a social institution. So think about how social institutions have influenced your life. For example, like, did you go to public school or private school? I went to public school, like from first grade through fourth grade, and then my parents unfortunately snatched me out and put me into a charter school for 3 years, and it was like the worst 3 years of my life, and it definitely shaped who I am today. Thankfully, went back to public school because my charter school was not a very good school. Or do you have a very large family or a very small family? I have a very large family, something crazy like 26 cousins. That includes second cousins, so don't get crazy or anything. But I have a very large family. They show up at everything from high school basketball games to Teacher of the Year presentations. My family is very, very supportive, and I think that kind of influences who I am as a person, right? And then, were your parents religious? Do you share those beliefs? Did you go against those beliefs? That's part of being a part of these social institutions. So, and then just kind of a little side note in terms of careers, in case you took this course and just because you were like, it kind of sounds interesting, just know that a lot of careers exist within sociology, such as being a college professor or a clinical sociologist. But sociology can benefit almost any career. Thinking about, in broad terms, what makes our society and our culture the way that it is really helps you gain perspective of others. And finally, this is our last little piece here. We will be taking a look into sociological theorists. So just take a look at these guys right here. We have Auguste Comte, and positivism is his theory, and Herbert Spencer and social Darwinism, Karl Marx and class conflict. You've probably heard of Herbert Spencer, maybe, and Karl Marx before in history class. I hope so. Hope you remember that. Emil Durkheim, and he really kind of starts to evolve in lots of different pieces of our social atmosphere. In fact, he makes sociology really into a broad topic of study into an actual scientific topic. And then Max Weber, who is going to talk to us about a very interesting piece, the Protestant ethic and what that means, okay? So we have some of our guys, we'll be taking a look at them a little bit later. Please also note that I have attached a crash course in sociology that will talk a little bit more in depth into some of the fields of study that we'll be looking at through this course. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the introduction, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you, guys.